connection. You're now live. Put this way up.
Yeah, you need to spin it around. Yeah, that's it. You on.
Yeah, there are. Okay, right, I'm going to make a start. So what Adam's asked me to do is to talk to you for about 15 minutes and then to answer questions that you come up with. So what I'm going to do in my 15 minutes, first of all, I'm going to tell you a bit about myself and my career, what I've learnt, who my role models are, that kind of thing, for about 5 minutes. Then I'm going to talk to you about our organisation, South Yorkshire Housing Association. And then finally, I'm going to talk to you about the work that we're doing with regards to health and social care, which is, I hesitate to say unique, but it's certainly at the cutting edge of the work on the integration health, social care, housing agenda that housing associations are doing. So for the first 5 minutes then, me. Adam said to me, please don't tell us that you just fell into housing by accident. Well, I won't, because I didn't. When I was 10 years old, I watched the Wednesday play for today, Kathy Come Home. I'm not quite sure why my parents allowed me to stay up late that night, but they did. So I saw the first showing of Kathy Come Home, and it affected me enormously, and I decided there and then that I wanted to work in housing. So I joined the local shelter group. I actually got myself suspended from school at one stage because in one of the publications I was involved with, I was the only mug who put his name down because I was trying to organise a sponsored walk for shelter, and I found myself in the headmaster's office being told that I was going to fess up the names of the other people who were involved in this scurrilous activity. So Kathy Come Home, shelter, absolutely is what pulled me into housing. And I was thrilled to actually be able to shake Ken Loach's hand at one of the Homes for Kathy projects that I've been involved with. So we had we had a showing from Cardboard Citizens of a revised version of Kathy, and Ken Loach was there, and Rob Campbell kindly introduced me to him. Didn't say a great deal other than that you're the reason that I've come into housing. So that's what I wanted to do. When I went to university, I was in York, and I took a year's sabbatical. I became the Community Actions Officer for York University Student Union, and one of the things I did was set up a local housing advice centre. One of my first experiences on the Bell Farm estate in York was going out and accompanying a family who were being evicted. And as the evening drew in, it got dark, we managed to get this family's possessions all out in the front garden, ready to be collected at a later date. I looked round, and peeping up from all sides of the horizon were these eyes, these kids' eyes. I couldn't believe it. They then just ran raids on these people's possession, and we were there trying to protect their stuff as these kids were coming in and pinching their stuff. Didn't put me off, and I wrote around to a number of London housing associations, and I got 2 job offers at the same time, London and Quadrant, and also Hyde. Both offered me a job. I turned down Hyde. Richard McCarthy took up the post in Hyde, and had 4 years at London and Quadrant as a housing officer, chasing rent arrears, dealing with neighbour nuisance, etc. in the East End of London. And then I really struck lucky. I got a job when I was 31 as chief executive of a local relatively small housing association at the time, Shackleton Housing Association it was called. And the beauty of that particular job was that there was only one way to go. The association was in such a mess, had been so badly run, had been so corrupt, that really it was a matter of putting the organisation back onto track, giving the staff some confidence. They'd had the book thrown at them by the regulators. These days, they definitely would have been closed down or transferred over immediately into another association. But they were being given another chance, and I came in. And the kind of thing I had to deal with was, on diversity, for example, I asked where the codes were for, the BME codes were for Asian people. And the housing manager said to me, we don't house Asian people, so we don't have a code for them. The Christmas party, the staff Christmas party, was held at the local Conservative club. And in order to really cheer it up, this is before my time, I have to add, but in order to cheer it up, they did some dancing, and they turned the television on, and it was the black and white version of the test card, those of you who are old enough to remember the test card. And they jigged around to music from the test card. So you can imagine not a wonderful place to be, and certainly the kind of place that it was easy to build up and create a really good organisation. And that then turned into Hexagon Housing Association. I was there for 9 years as chief executive, and then I moved to South Yorkshire Housing Association 22 years ago. And I absolutely love it here. I love this place. I love the people who are here. I love the history. I love our board. We have a very brave board, very principled board. Sometimes things come up and other chief executives say to me, aren't you worried about that? And I'll say, no. You know, my board knows what we're up to. Okay, that went wrong. We've taken a risk. It went wrong. But the board knew what we were doing. The board has always backed me when I've been mouthy. I can be mouthy and speak up, make myself unpopular in some circles, particularly government circles sometimes. But the board have always backed me, and that gives me great confidence and assurance to know what I'm doing. So far as the organisation's concerned, we set out our statement of purpose 2 or 3 years ago now, and what we say is with SYHA, you can settle, live well, and realise your potential. If you think Jim Collins, that hedgehog, that clarity of purpose, that's ours. You can settle, live well, and realise your potential. Think of it as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you like. So that makes it very easy for me to know what I should be doing. It means that the board knows, our staff knows. We're about the whole community. We're about the whole purpose. And what really matters to us is that we have the maximum impact with all our resources. And I'll just mention one quick example of that. A presentation I went to earlier this week. We have, from time to time, we organise open houses for our care and supported housing service. We had one this week. Before I forget, here's an invitation. If anybody is interested coming along to our next one, it'll be in the summer. Send me a DM or an email, and you're in. You can have a place on it. We have about 10 people booked up already for the next one. Anyway, this time round, I heard from one of my colleagues here, Niall O'Reilly, and he told us about the work he's doing to support people with enduring and crisis mental health issues to either stay in the workplace or to get back into employment. And what Niall said, and this penny had never dropped until he said it in these terms, is he said, watching Kathy come home, the reason that slippery slope, the very first thing that happened was that the husband, the man of the house, lost his job. And then the whole pack of cards started to come down. So what we're doing, we're going to be working with 3,500 people over the next 2 years to help them on that work and health journey. Why should a housing association be doing that kind of thing? Why should a housing association be involved in health? Well, most of the health and social care organisations, nationally and locally, haven't got it right, have they? I mean, they're in crisis with regards to their structures. Their STPs are in a mess. The integration agenda hasn't worked. They're not in contact properly. They haven't properly got the customer voice, the patient voice in there with their sustainability and transformation plans. So housing associations, who are really good at our best at making sure that that voice is there in the boardroom and affecting our services, really shaping our services. What better organisations that are agile, that are innovative, they're in touch with exactly those kinds of people that health and local authorities know that they need to be directing their services towards. Why shouldn't we do it? It's challenging. We have to learn, if you like, to speak NHS. I'll tell you what doesn't work is dusting down your corporate brochure and going along and getting a time in the chief executive's diary and then going along and pitching what you're good at. I've heard so many associations talking about exactly that kind of thing. And then they seem baffled a few weeks later when nobody returns their calls. That doesn't work. What you have to do, you have to go to where those organisations are at. You have to find out how you, as a housing association, can be useful to them. And those are exactly the kind of things we've done. Organised pilots at our own expense. We're investing at the moment, another example, in a pilot called Doing Care Differently. And this is SYHA putting our money up. We all know, don't we, home care, what a disastrous service it is. The standards, the whole, what do you want to do while I'm here? Do you want me to fix you something to eat, or shall I run you a bath because I can't do both? That is absolutely ripe for disruption, that whole sector, how well housing associations could do. But it's really tricky. We haven't got anybody commissioning us to do this. So we're starting it in a place. And we're going to build it around the assets in that place. So that's a sense of what SYHA is about, what we stand for. I'll just finish off. Adam asked me to mention some people who I find inspiring. Well, John Sparks is my number one there. John Sparks, he's the Chief Executive of Crisis. I think he's wonderful. He is the guy who, with his organisation, has seen through the Homelessness Reduction Act. And having done that, what have they gone and done? They said, well, it's our 50th anniversary. We're not having a party. We're actually disgusted that we're still here in this day and age, in Britain now, that there is a need for an organisation like Crisis or Shelter, etc. 50 years after Cathy Come Home was first broadcast, fifth richest country in the world. How can we have homelessness in the way that it is? And it's increasing. It's increasing rapidly. And if you look at the projections, the straight line projections for the next 20 years, it is only going one way, and that is upwards. It's very rapidly increasing upwards. And so Crisis, what they're going to do next May is to come out with a plan to end homelessness in this country once and for all. That's a fantastic plan. But if that guy and that organisation can take the Homelessness Reduction Act through a government which you wouldn't normally have expected to be sympathetic to those kinds of issues, who's to say that they can't come up with a plan and get government to, if not endorse every line, certainly back the spirit of it? So that's the kind of ambition, that's the kind of selflessness that I really admire. So John Sparks is number one, and I'll let you into, well, it's not really a secret, he's on our board. We've got him on our board. I'm absolutely thrilled about that, and he's making a big impact. Secondly, in terms of somebody outside the sector, Bob Kerslake, former Chief Executive of Sheffield City Council, so I know him very well, and then Chief Executive of the Homes Communities Agency, and the head of the Civil Service. Those of you who know Jim Collins will know about the Level 5 leadership. Bob Kerslake is my idea of a Level 5 leader. Selfless, completely dedicated to service. You hear him talking, And I sometimes want to say to him, Bob, just lift your head up a bit, just speak up a bit. He's the opposite of the egotistical, command-driven captain of whatever that we're used to seeing as archetypal role models. So when people say to me, who's your role model? As a chief executive, as a leader, not Richard Branson, it's John Sparks, it's Bob Kerslake. I'm very aware that's two men I've mentioned. So let me give a very, very quick name check to some of the fantastic colleagues that I've got, the women chief executives in housing associations. There's brilliant people out there, people like Angela Lockwood at North Star, Charlie Norman over at St Vincent's, Sinead, the chair of Place Shapers, and Philippa Jones at Bromford. Wonderful, lovely people to work with, fantastic role models. I'm very pleased to say at SYHA the majority of our management team, the majority of our directors team, until very recently actually the majority of our board are women. I am surrounded by brilliant women here and also outside the sector. So that's my 15 minutes going solo. So I'm now going to have a look at some of the questions that you've put in. Somebody said here, Aileen, Grand Union. Well, Aileen used to work for me here, and she and I are great friends and also co-conspirators at Shout, the campaign for social housing. So absolutely, Aileen and Alison Inman, the list goes on and on, doesn't it? So here we are, there's another question. I know there's clarity of purpose at SYHA. Can you describe why joy is important to SYHA? Now that question is in from Adam, who was with us at the open house on Wednesday this week that I mentioned earlier. And what we say is that we want your experience with SYHA to be a joy. That is not typical language for a housing association to use. I was at a meeting in Grimsby a little while ago where the association said, this sounds just like management claptrap. What are you talking about joy for? I bet your staff don't go along with that. They think you're out with the fairies. And I said to them, well, I bet if I go and have a look at my Yammer feed, I'm a great fan of Yammer. Yammer is very actively used at SYHA. It's very democratic, and our staff use it a lot. And I said, I bet if I look at our Yammer feed, then I'll find that, say, half of the posts on there use the word joy, enjoyment, joyful, etc. I got back in the next morning, checked, and the straw poll, there was 70% of the posts there used that kind of language. So whether it's me talking to a colleague here, whether it's dealing with customers here, whether it's the way we organise projects, the way we have board meetings, we believe that everybody is entitled to joy and fun in their lives, and that just because you're poor, you're on benefits, doesn't mean that you're not entitled to live in a beautiful home, a beautiful place. So we get up to all kinds of things, whether it's theatre projects, pottery projects, helping people with work, volunteering. We have loads of volunteering here. And what absolutely thrills me is that nearly half of the volunteers that work with our customers are actually customers themselves. I saw one today, for example, just fresh off the press. One of the things that we're doing with regards to helping people get into work involves some very vulnerable people who haven't been in work for ages, years. And some of those people are now volunteering with us, helping other people to get back into work. What else have we got here? Gabby mentioning benefit to society. Yeah, we're big supporters of benefit to society. And there's another question being passed through about Dominic Rabb. I'll come on to him in a sec. Benefit to society. Started off as smashing silly stereotypes. The brilliant people. Here we are. There's another brilliant woman in social housing. Catherine Little for Soho. Absolutely fantastic person. The way that she and Richard Peacock there have worked together to lead that project. As I say, smashing silly stereotypes, working with the NUJ. Our team here have been out during the course of this week, going out and catching tenant stories and just playing it back, just confronting this othering, the stereotypes, the negative stereotypes that are out there. Dominic Raab, what do I think? Well, his quotes aren't brilliant, are they? He's anti-feminist, as far as I can see. Talks about men should burn their briefs in protest against women's feminism. That's not a good start. He's a free marketeer. As somebody who supports Shout, you'll expect me to say that I don't think that the market can meet all the housing problems that we face in this country, that we do need state intervention. And we had a consensus about that during the 1950s. Macmillan's government, the Labour Party agreeing that the state should be involved in housing. So we'll see. He's a bright man. We'll see whether he's willing to listen. The one thing I haven't done yet is to catch up on Question Time from last night. I know he was on there, and I did tweet him and say, "Hope you have a good housing." A good housing question coming at you. Gabby's put another one in there. He's been supporting Toby Young. Well, enough said, really. I don't need to say what you all know about Toby Young. Loathsome, the kind of stuff that he's been doing. And if Dominic Raab has been supporting him, I think it's pretty unforgivable. I'm going to have a look at some other questions now that you've put in there. What advice would I give to my 17-year-old self from what I know now? I'm afraid I'm not going to be very original about that. Probably worry a little less. I tend to worry about things. Having said that, I think as a human being, the stuff that you might think of as your defects can also be your assets, because I do worry what can go wrong. It means I've got my antennae out. I'm pretty good at risk management. I can smell stuff when it just doesn't feel quite right, when another person isn't quite right, when they're not authentic, they're just using the words, but they're not really genuine. I think I can tell that. So, yeah, I probably would say worry a bit less. I have lost more nights' sleep than I should have done over the years. But the way I think about it is that actually there's only really two things that happen. Either you do something well or you do it badly. You might make a mistake. If you do it well, fantastic. It's going to be good for the organisation, yourself, etc. Very affirming. If you get it wrong, then there's something you can learn from. And I've made some great mistakes. I've made some fantastic mistakes. We launched our shared ownership subsidiary at the height of just before actually the property crash. Our commercial subsidiary here at SYHA, we launched 6 days before the Northern Rock crash. So what do we do then? Well, we don't go ahead with building the housing for sale that we were otherwise planning to do. But we had a team of people we recruited, and we said to them, you decide what you want to do. And it's worked fantastically well. We now have a commercial estate agency providing landlord services, letting services, managing services, an ethical estate agency to provide an alternative offer locally, and that's a real boost for SYHA and our social housing work. It's another string to our bow. Some advice for future leaders. I've been asked to say 2 or 3 things. First of all, always say yes. If somebody asks you to do something and you think, God, I'm the last person who should be, whatever it is, speaking at such and such conference, leading a project, going and giving some advice or whatever, just say yes. Say you'll do it. Assuming it's not too injurious for your health or whatever, provided it's reasonable, do it. Say yes. Accept the challenge there. I've had the experience several times. I've signed up for a conference, and then conference organisers will ring me and say, can you speak on that? And I said, well, I went along to try and find out from other people. And I say, yeah, but we'd like you to speak about it. So, all right, I'll do that then. And there's always somebody who can help you, isn't there? So a lot of I speak a lot at conferences. A lot of the stuff that I do, I just ask people to give me their thoughts. And I'm very happy to be a mouthpiece very often on stuff that I really don't know a whole lot about, or certainly didn't before I accepted it. So say yes to that. Secondly, ask for help, ask for advice. I'm nearer the end of my career than I am the start of my career, but we have some absolutely brilliant people within SYHA. We encourage young leaders. We have an academy. We're on to our 4th cohort now of people working in our academy. And when you're young and you ask somebody who's older to help you, it's wonderful. It's life for me. We want to do it. I mean, I just, again, very, very recently for me, we've just moved house, sold my house. And the guy I sold my house to emailed me yesterday and said, can you meet up for a cup of coffee? He wants to pick my brains. He wants to learn from me. He wants to come and work for South Yorkshire Housing Association. He's not even in the housing sector at the moment. Not quite sure how I've managed to sell SYHA to him. But the point is, as soon as I got that email through, I didn't think, you bastard, you should have paid far more for the house or whatever it was. I thought, you want my help, I'm very, very happy to give it. And that generally is the response that you'll get. Always ask people. They'll do it for you. Don't hesitate. Right, what's this next one? Am I pleased to have rejoined the CIH? I think so. It's very early days for me here. Alison had been nagging me for years, actually. This is a confession. Alison had been nagging me for years, and I kept resisting it. I came out of it originally because I wasn't getting very much value out of it 30-odd years ago. And then she rang me and said, Jamie Sanderson's part of his Rising Stars Award has asked for you to be his mentor, but you have to be a member of the Institute of Housing. I said, well, I better join them, didn't I? So I have joined. What else? I've got more questions here. I've got some really, really nice comments. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I've really enjoyed this. I hope you have as well. Last couple of minutes then. We can hear in your voice. Oh, no, it's just a nice comment. These are nice comments. Come on, somebody ask me a question. Last one. Shout out to Jamie. Yes, definitely. Jamie's in LA by watching this. Hi, Jamie. See you in a couple of weeks. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'm going to ask Danielle to ask me a question in a minute. Danielle's helping me by writing down all your comments here. Biggest challenge in the next year. Thanks, Adam. Got me off the hook there. Challenge in the next year. Well, my very first phone call after I came in after the Christmas break was from I'll try and get their name right, the Regulator for Social Housing, launched today. You've got an IDA. Great, thank you. We were due for one. We haven't had one for 4 years, so that's our immediate challenge. We'll be fine. I know we'll be fine. So that's something very immediate. In terms of more widely within the sector, we have to make sure, don't we, that we get the future funding for care and supported housing sorted out. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful stuff we did in terms of getting Theresa May to announce that the LHA cap had been overturned. Fantastic, absolutely brilliant that was. And the proposals that are in there, to be honest, I would settle for those, but we can get them much better. And one of my phone calls this morning was with Sue at the National Housing Federation. Got a Place Shapers meeting on Thursday, trying to make sure that we get that we get that response absolutely right. So that's critical. And then more locally, in the Sheffield City region, we know we need to up housing supply. Housing supply is flatlining at a time that the economy is taking off and job creation is taking off. So we're working very, very closely with the HCA, the local authorities, the combined authority on something we call More New Homes, which is a plan that my colleague here, Miranda, has put together, has now been adopted by the LEP to ensure that social housing is playing its part. Here we are, there's another question here. How do you balance the strong principles that can be at odds with pragmatic need to influence and deliver quality for your residents? Do you know, I never really struggle with that. From time to time, I bite my tongue, I suppose, in things that I say. I did once have David Orr send me a letter. I felt like it was a letter from the headmaster saying that I'd been a bit too mouthy, criticising. In fact, it was the Channel 4 newscaster, Elia Ebrahimi, who had ploughed into, in fact, David himself. And I described her as a witch at a National Housing Federation conference, which it got a laugh, but it probably wasn't my best use of language. Probably sexist, to be honest. And David quite reasonably took me to task. But you know the phrase, ask for forgiveness, not ask for permission. I do believe that if I say what I want, what I believe, in a courteous way, bearing in mind that what the other person thinks may well be right. And I don't think many people would say that I'm rude or deliberately awkward. So I do have confidence, I suppose, in myself to get that balance right. And there we are. There's somebody saying, good luck with your IDA. And another one about being back in the headmaster's office. Yeah, it is a bit of a theme, isn't it? Well, that brings us up to 1 o'clock. So I'm going to save this now. I'm going to post it, upload it, so it'll be there for 24 hours. Tell your friends. And thanks very much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure getting all this feedback here. And there's one of my colleagues down the corridor there, Haf, with another question. Haf, I'm just going to come and see you and we'll talk about it. Bye for now.